All right, so now we need to run these few lines of code here. What we're trying to do is break our data set down into a training data set and a validation data set. The training data is what we will use to build the decision tree. The validation data set is what we will use to test whether the decision tree model is accurate or not. We can't use the same data set for that. If we use the same data, that would be like saying, I know that this flower is a Virginica, and then running the model and being surprised when the model tells you it's a Virginica, right? I mean, you've already established that. So we have to build the model using one set of data and then test whether or not it works using another set of data. So to do that, we'll use these 5 lines right here in the middle. So this first one, all we're doing is counting the number of observations we have in our data set. So we're just setting n equal to the result of number of rows from the data set. And so we have down here our 1047 values. This line is a little bit weird. Normally, if this were a real data set, a real analysis, I would not set the seed at all. The random number generator that is part of the sample function starts with a randomly selected seed number, or an initial starting place. The reason it always returns a random answer, the reason I can run this 100 times and always get a different answer every time, is that that seed is always a different number. But for our case, since we're all running the same analysis and because we want to get the same answers, right? You want to know that you got it right because you got the same answer I did. So for that to happen, we have to start with the same seed. So I'm setting my sample seed here to 240. You need to do the same thing. In any other scenario, outside of classwork, don't set the seed. Leave it purely random. But here we're setting it. Then I'm going to use the sample command to say from 1 to 100 or 1047, randomly select 350 numbers. And so then I'm going to use those down here to say my training data are those not included in that list of 135, but my validation data are those that are included in the 350. So if I run those, if I come over here and I look at my training data, I have 697 observations that I'm going to use in my training data. That's the 1047 minus the 350. And then I also have in my validation data the 350 that were randomly selected. So I now have 2 data frames, one called training data that is larger and I will use to train my data, and one called validation, which is about half the size of the training data, but this is the one that I will use to validate my model.